Well, that didn't take long, now did it? Because it's happened again. Another police officer killed, and as usual, it's a white man who murdered him. And as usual, the white media has all but ignored it, and the white public won't even talk about it. Rusk County Sheriff's Deputy Dan Glaze went on patrol last Saturday, as he had been doing for 7 years. But, as we all know, nearly all cop killings in the United States are committed by white males. So, it was only a matter of time before the white super predators retired Deputy Glaze for good. Daniel Glaze was getting ready in anticipation of the upcoming Halloween celebration, but as he found out to his sorrow, white-on-white crime never takes a holiday. October 29th, 2016, Ladysmith, Wisconsin. Rusk County Sheriff's Deputy Daniel Glaze was on patrol around 11 o'clock p.m. when he received a report of a suspicious vehicle in a field. The service call came from a man who, concerned about the vehicle on his property not far from his house, felt that the sheriffs needed to get involved. Deputy Glaze went to investigate. When he located the vehicle, he radioed for backup. It was shortly after this, police say, Deputy Glaze was shot and killed in his patrol car by a white thug, Douglas Netek. At some point, police immediately discerned that Netek was the culprit, and a huge manhunt ensued. Police tracked Netek to his home. He then fired on the police. Well, American law enforcement didn't have any other choice than to return fire, right? I mean, you shoot at the police, you can... Oh, forget it. He's white, so you know what happened. The cops didn't even bother to fire back. This led to the typical standoff because the police are a white supremacist organization, and even white criminals who kill white cops are seen as part of the team, because they're all fighting for the same thing. Well, police deployed a robot, though not armed with explosives. This is a white man we're talking about, remember? After a lengthy standoff, Netek surrendered and was safely taken into custody. So, when a cop is allegedly killed by a black man, they immediately use explosives without checking or caring to see if anyone else is in the building because the suspect is so dangerous they have no choice. But when a white man kills a cop, they just sit back and talk to him until he eventually is bored into surrender. That's because policing in America doesn't have a damn thing to do with protecting the public. American police exist to control the black population, and the means of doing that is unrestrained violence. That's what the illegal and unnecessary bomb used in Dallas was all about. It was about trying to deter any other black men from deciding to stand up to police violence, for all the good it did them. Now, the obvious question is, who is Douglas Netek? Well, he's a white man, so you won't be surprised to learn that this guy is a career criminal with a record that goes back decades. This guy really is a thief's thief and a convict's convict. He's done everything from jumping bail to resisting arrest, 5 DUIs, battery, petty theft, disorderly conduct, sexual assault in the 3rd and 4th degrees, this back in 1993. Oh, and he was also arrested for tampering with an ignition interlock device. Most recently, though, he was arrested in July in Wisconsin for first-degree reckless endangerment. Now, if this white thug had merely been punished for the numerous felonies he'd committed over the decades, then Daniel Glaze would still be alive, because his killer would have been behind bars. But that assumes that white people are even concerned about life or the law, which they are not. Their main concern is the preservation of white privilege, and you can't deny it to one white person without having to deny it to all of them. And so they've long since accepted that the occasional white person will inevitably become collateral damage. The dominant society doesn't give a damn about Deputy Glaze. Neither do the police. Or haven't you noticed that the usual Blue Lies Brigade is nowhere to be seen? No white politicians are writing any legislation to toughen penalties for cop killers. No white chumps talking the phony rhetoric about protecting those who protect us. They only pull out that line of crap when the alleged killer is black. And I noticed that the white media hasn't been very enthusiastic about giving us a comprehensive listing of Mr. Netek's crimes. They're going to great pains not to tell us about this guy, and that's because the white media is the propaganda arm of white supremacy. Even when a white man kills another white man, the white media realizes that their job is still to protect the image of white people as law-abiding. So when it comes to the typical white super predator, the white media understands it's best to be as vague and sketchy with the details as possible. Now, this is the same Wisconsin where Sheriff Clark, pretends to maintain the law in Milwaukee. And as I reported to you before, Wisconsin has been documented as the most hostile and least desirable place in America for black people to live. Though according to Sheriff Kuhn, police are terrified to do their jobs because black people are menacing them. Black people are the biggest threat to police, according to David Clark. Well, David Kuhn doesn't live too far from Ladysmith, Wisconsin, so he should take a drive down there and tell Deputy Glaze's family that black people are the ones that they should be afraid of. Policing is one of the safest jobs in America, but to the extent that it is dangerous, it's only because of white males, the protected criminal class in America. And it's also because the police refuse to punish white offenders. They took this scumbag alive, which sends the clear message to every white thug in the country that if you shoot a cop, you'll get your day in court, which for white men means you'll get reduced charges and eventually a slap on the wrist. And the police, who are white in the main, are clearly fine with all this. They understand that any cop who dies is merely a tiny inconvenience when compared with the supreme principle of white privilege, which is what they are truly working for. White cops know what their job is. It's to serve and protect white power, and that power begins with absolute white privilege. After all, who needs the ability to be immune from the law more than a white police officer? They fully understand what happened last Saturday, and they're fine with it. White males are always online and on TV claiming that police are justified in killing black people because black people are just so dangerous. Well, we know the bastards are simply trying to kick up a smokescreen to distract people from the fact that white males are the criminal class in the United States and worldwide. As their savagery becomes more and more exposed, and we take away their ability to cover up the facts and their protection from the DAs and judges, the pale males have become more irrational and ridiculous in their pathetic tactics to conceal the plague of white criminality. But reality always has the last word. With the two shootings in Dallas and Baton Rouge, police have been trying to play up the idea that it's open season on the cops, as if the killings of police now is higher than it's ever been. And the white media repeats this fraudulent narrative until the public actually starts to believe it. After all, when's the last time you saw 4 and 5 cops being killed in a single instant? It's undeniable. From January 1st of this year until the present November 1st, 49 cops have been shot to death, compared with 33 last year, a 48% increase. Well, clearly cops are in more danger now than they've been in our lifetimes, because no other time even comes close. Except if you actually look at the NLEOMF's own figures, just 2 years ago, in 2014, 49 officers were shot to death that year as well, the same as this year. And before that, in 2011, a whopping 73 cops were shot to death. That's a 35% increase over this year. And things weren't much better in 2010 when 60 cops were shot to death, or 2009 when 50 cops were shot to death, and before that, in 2007, 70 cops were shot to death. In the last 10 years, there's been at least 2 years when 70-plus cops were killed by gunfire, but you've never seen Sheriff Coon talk about that. No Blue Lives Matter movement, no back the badge bullcrap. You remember seeing any cops losing their minds 5 years ago or 9 years ago? Remember President Empty Suit signing any legislation to protect police? Any white cops saying that the police were being targeted? There were far more cops killed in 2011 than this year, and that's after 2 so-called mass shootings of police. But the cops weren't saying anything about a true cop bloodbath 5 years ago or 9 years ago, and they haven't said a word about it since either, have they? But the last 2 years, the babies in blue have been whining nonstop in the safest work environment they've had in years. Then again, there was no black grassroots movement punishing them either. Since July 2016, when the Dallas police shooting occurred, there have been over 22 killings of police officers by gunfire, according to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund website. Now, when you do a person-by-person head count, you immediately see that the vast majority of the fallen the last few months died as the result of car crashes, not gunshot wounds. However, when you do count up the police officers who have been killed in the line of duty since July 2016, you see that I'm right. I will not include Baton Rouge and Dallas in this count since they were total anomalies. Let's add up the number of officers killed by white men in just the last 4 months alone. Deputy Sheriff Paul Clark of St. Francois, Missouri. He died on July 4th as a result of injuries he sustained after a white man, Donald Hornsey, intentionally ran him over with a pickup truck during a traffic stop. Ronald Kienzle and Joe Zangaro, Berrien County, Illinois bailiffs who were killed, you'll recall, on July 11th in the courthouse by a white convict, Larry Gordon. You'll recall that I covered for you the murder of Corporal Bill Cooper in white-on-white crime number 12. The Sebastian County, Arkansas deputy was murdered by a white man, Billy Monroe James, on August 10th of this year. Police officer Kenny Moats, murdered on August 25th by a white man, Brian Stallings. Clint Corvinus of Alamogordo, New Mexico, murdered on September 2nd by whatever. Blake Snyder of Missouri, murdered October 6th by Trenton Forster. October 9th, Deputy Sheriff Jack Hopkins was murdered by Jack Lee Briner. And most recently, Daniel Glaze on October 29th. During the same period, the number of white police killed by black men was less than half of that. And these are just the white police who were killed by gunshots in the last 4 months. When you add in the vast majority of police who were killed in car crashes, and consider the fact that nearly all of those involved a white driver, usually drunk, because whites are 83% of DUIs in America, then the threat white people pose to police in America becomes total. More Hispanics have shot cops to death in the last 4 months than black people have, but the pale males aren't holding their racial hierarchy together based on anti-Latino racism. They're doing it strictly based on anti-black racism. So don't expect any statistics to ever come forward into the equation, because this isn't about the facts. It's about lies, specifically the lie of white entitlement. The Fraternal Order of Police never feels compelled to demand harder legislation from lawmakers after a white man kills a cop, because they are the very defenders and enforcers of white supremacy. Nobody cares less about the deaths of police than white cops. A police officer's death only matters to them to the extent that they can exploit it for political gain. They gladly overlook the mountain of dead cops murdered by white men and choose to fixate on the handful killed by black suspects, who in many cases were only reacting to the mortal danger they felt themselves to be in. Consider this. According to the Washington Post's police shootings database, which is hardly comprehensive, might I add, there have been 194 black people shot to death by police in the United States so far this year. Of that number, 16 were unarmed, and another 13 whose weapon status is unknown. That means the police shot at least 29 people who were unarmed, and if you add in black people armed only with a knife or a toy weapon, the number jumps to 57. That's just what the Washington Post bothered to document. Now, you'll notice how I leave out the other category. Police are able to claim that anything is a weapon. Anything at all. Remember Deborah Tanner, the 66-year-old New York elderly woman murdered by the NYPD because she had a baseball bat? You want to save cops' lives? Start punishing white men when they commit crimes, because without exception, every one of these white cop killers had a rap sheet long as my arm. Violent felonies, and in all their cases, they got slaps on the wrist until they killed. White males are the most dangerous demographic in America. White cops kill, rape, and assault people more than anyone else, and their non-police white counterparts are even worse. White males are simply more dangerous because their culture conditions them that way, as does their biology. To pretend that there isn't something inherently dangerous with them is a derangement that we can't afford. So yet another white police is put in the ground, and predictably yet another white male put him there. The white media ignores it. The white police establishment shrugs it off with their typical ho-hum apathy. Cops die every day, mostly by a white driver or suicide. So if the cop's death can't be used to benefit the police's sick drive for power and racial control, then they don't care. And if they don't, then neither should we. I'm not shedding any tears for Deputy Glaze, because none of the police have shed any tears for us. None of them have stood in solidarity with the innocents murdered by police. And don't even try to give me the pathetic, well, there are a few good ones crap. As long as the so-called good cops refuse to break ranks with the bad ones or to even speak up, then that makes them bad cops as well. I judge people by the company they keep. Daniel Glaze is a victim of the white men who lie every day with the ridiculous claim that black men are the biggest threat to police, when in fact it's white males themselves who the police should fear. He's also a victim of corrupt white politicians who pass pointless laws aimed at punishing black men who are not killing cops, all the while daily allowing the white men who are killing cops to routinely escape punishment for the felonies they commit until they finally graduate their way up to cop killer. He's a victim of a white dominant society that praises the very people who murdered him. But mostly Daniel Glaze was a victim of the police themselves, a corrupt and perverted race control apparatus more interested in maintaining white supremacy than they are with preserving the lives of their own foot soldiers. Daniel Glaze has been turned into yet another human sacrifice to white privilege. That trumps the law and human life, including blue lives. even white lives. And so, it won't be long at all before I have to report to you about yet another tragedy in the self-inflicted genocide of white on white crime.